Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is War 11 of Season 38, and today I have Hood, Miles and Titania. Apologies if my voice is a bit off, I've got a cold at the moment, but we'll just get on with it. So, we're starting off on Path 7, and then I'll be moving into Path 2 in Section 2. Starting with this Skrull and the Longshot. Then the Herc, that IDoom, Mojo, Kingpin, Surfer, Mangog and Knull. So for this scroll on Conflictor, this is still the old nodes on Path 7. Because Hood doesn't apply debuffs except if I'm going to be using SP3, SP1 does as well, but since Skrull is shock immune, that won't do it. So I'm just going to be sticking with SP2 and not parrying if I can avoid it. Using a power start 1 so I can get my buff control up early. I don't think I'll need to bait too many specials in here. I think 1 or 2 special 2s from Hood here will get me enough bullets to detonate and KO. Here I thought that blocked hit was going to push me for 2 bars of power, so I dashed back and threw my special. Then I realised that I was on SP1, so not the most ideal start, but because of Mystic Dispersion I'm back to a lot of power fairly quickly. I have MD5, which is really good for Hood. Just punishing that special there to take off the falter on me. Now I'm at my SP2, just going to bait out this other special and then throw it. Got my invisibility up, so it shouldn't take me too long to get to another special 2. He's on 2 bars of power, but if I throw this and I hold block, he can dash in. He won't throw his special, and I can just heavy with my 2 free misses from invisibility, and the detonate KOs him. Next up, Titania is fantastic for this Longshot placement. Whenever you apply a non-damaging debuff to Longshot, he loses any good karma. The issue here is if he gets to an SP2 where he has Pure of Heart active, he'll apply the Incinerate on activation, and that can start doing some pretty big Incinerate damage. Even buff immune characters can get that Incinerate if you fail a buff because of the way the coding works out, but since Titania stops him ever getting Pure of Heart, that's fantastic. The suppressions help a little bit with Vivified, but not too much. And just going to bait out this SP2, take it on block, just because I know it won't do too much damage. Brute Force isn't so much of an issue because I have class advantage as well. So I bait out this SP1, I throw my heavy just after, just to bait out a special. The AI is more likely to throw a special once you knock him down. Now I have my 3 bars of power, I'm just going to hit into his block, apply a few suppressions, get a few more furies, and throw my SP3. I have Science power back boosters, so I get a lot of power back afterwards. Throw my SP2 because of all of that power that I gained from my SP3, and the fight is over. Very, very safe fight. Next up we have this Hercules on the Bubble Shield root node. Because these nodes don't do too much to make Hercules a pain, it means that I was comfortable using Titania here. I could have very easily done it with Hood, but I wanted to keep my bullets for future fights that Hood was going to be taking, so I felt pretty good about using Titania. Hercules is a large champion, so we get that extra 30% damage from her signature ability. And she can also use staggers to cancel out her immortality phase, which is a really nice piece of utility. So I'm just going to be looking out for Bubble Shield. I want to make sure that when I block 10 hits, I'm aware of it. Another thing just to watch out for a little bit is if Hercules has a feat of strength completed while he's above 2 bars of power, he will get extra combat power rate, so don't just assume that Power Focus 2 will save you there. I'm just going to be baiting out his SP2 if possible. If not, I'm fine baiting his SP3 as long as I have a Haymaker ready. And here, just as I'm about to push him, I throw my SP3. That applies a lot of debuffs, and one of them is Intimidate, which means they're a little bit more passive, but don't panic because that will always run out before your Haymaker duration is over. So you can see there, he just throws his SP3 in time. It's not as risky as it looks because the AI loves throwing their SP3. I haven't yet not had that duration of Haymaker be active while the opponent throws their SP3. Just throwing my SP1 there just to get rid of the root timer. You'll notice that a lot of my debuffs are actually sticking during this Infuriate, which might seem odd, but I have the Hood Synergy, which gives me an extra 50% ability accuracy for my debuffs, and that means that Infuriate doesn't do very much to stop your debuffs actually sticking. So we're coming to the end of this fight, and I want to time my heavy attack so that I can cancel out his immortality. But I also know that I've only got 2 blocked hits before unblockable triggers, so I take those 2 there and dodge out very quickly. Gotta have my eye on that. I managed to get my heavy in, and now we can just finish out the fight and cancel out his immortality like that. It's not something you have to force. You can just wait out the immortality and be careful, but it's nice when it works out. So next up, we're going to be going for this IDoom on the Buffet and Glancing Armor node. I wouldn't want to take this if I didn't have the Hood Synergy, just because, as I called out in the Hercules fight, the extra ability accuracy on debuffs means that you can get around a lot of the glancing. So I knew this was going to be a longer fight going into this, just because Doom is very tanky. The game plan is just to go for SP3, throw it, and then do a big chunk of damage. Also, really make sure that I have my stagger up when he goes to 15%, which is when his regen kicks in. I don't want to be dealing with that regen, and I don't want to be dealing with the unblockable that will go with it due to the node. Just going to be pushing IDoom to SP2 because I know the timing for his SP1 if I have to, but I feel a lot more confident just taking the last hit of his SP2 on block. It doesn't do too much damage, which is fine. I'm just going to use my Haymaker to try and push him to SP2, and he throws his SP1 into my block, and I just about managed to dex it. So I'm just going to bait out one more SP2 before I throw my SP3, because I want him to be on pretty much no power when I throw it. Just gonna take that on block again. Now, here's the first big mistake of the fight. I throw my SP3 while I'm hitting IDoom, and so because when I threw my SP3 I was doing a light attack, it meant that that final hit that glanced was also applied to my SP3. SP3s can't glance in general, but if you throw it on the same frame as your glancing attack, it will. So that means I come out and there's no debuffs pretty much, and it's quite annoying. He throws his SP1 and I get caught by it. I'm not too worried about timing out. I know that I'm not going to make that mistake again this fight, because I will definitely remember at that point, but I just have to build it up to another SP3 unfortunately. So I'm just going to bait out this SP2. He's not being super nice about throwing it. Got to bait out for a while. He manages to throw it eventually. And I'm at my SP3 now, but again, I want him to be on pretty much no power. So I'm just going to push him back to another SP2. So again, he's being very stingy with his SP2. We're about halfway through the fight and halfway through the time, but we're about to get a nice chunk of damage, so I'm not worried about that at this point. He finally throws this SP2, and I'm just going to do a few hits on block, but make sure I back off afterwards. I don't want to get hit with another glancing. So, we throw the SP3. Does a nice bit of damage. The main bit comes afterwards though. Going to be reversing some of his healing and doing bursts of damage. He resists that, which is very annoying. Now I want to do a heavy, but I go in here, finish my 5-hit combo, and I dash back, and that is my mistake. His SP3 hits me and KOs me. So, Titania's second medium is quite a long duration, which means that if you dash back afterwards and the AI throws their special, you don't have time to dex afterwards. I knew that, I just forgot it in the moment, so that was all the way up to War 11, unfortunately, before we got a death. I just had a lot going on my mind. The couple mistakes I'd already made were playing on it, and I also had the 15% mark in mind. I think I died when he was at 17 or 18%, so I wanted to get a heavy off. That was playing on my mind, and just culminated in a silly error. So we're going back in. I'm just going to start off with a couple of heavies, get my staggers up, make sure that I can stop this healing. It triggers and we staggered it. Now I've just got to close this fight out. And I am not going to be trying to dex his SP2 because I do not want to lose 2 bonuses here. So here we go, I'm just going to go back in, throw my combo, throw my SP2, and that finishes it off. That's how close we were to finishing out this fight. Another 20 seconds off, which is definitely frustrating, but you know, I'm happy with how long I managed to go without a death this season, and in the end, it's a hard fight. It's a silly error, but it's a hard fight. So overall, just gonna push it out of my mind and carry on with section 2. So moving on to this Mojo to try and regain some pride with Titania. You've seen me take this fight before, and it's a fairly straightforward one. Main thing that I try and do is just bait out SP1 from Mojo, just because I don't really want to, take an SP2 and risk not having my Haymaker ready. So to start off with, just going to throw a few light attacks, build up my Furies, going to trigger Haymaker here and just stand there, just baiting a special, leaving myself very open for the AI, but obviously I'm not at any risk of taking damage since my Haymaker is active. So I throw my SP2 and with a couple of nice crits I get a lot of power back. Taking that SP1 on block because I'm not far enough to outrange it, ending my combo with a medium just to get enough power to throw my SP2, and that finishes it off. And it's a very quick fight. Nice to see after my first death. This Kingpin placement is probably just a counter of buff immune champion, since Ant-Man, Red Guardian and Spidey don't really take Kingpin very well, but what they probably don't know is that Titania is actually fantastic for Kingpin. When you apply a debuff, say you apply one of your suppressions, if he shrugs that into a rage, that is an extra debuff that he applies to himself, so Titania gets extra Furies, and if you apply double debuffs, you can actually get 3 Furies from 1 hit. So you can see I'm already up to 33 Furies, and we're only 20 seconds into the fight. You also don't need to worry about his shrug off too much, because you're not relying on parries to get your openings with your Haymakers. Your Haymaker obviously comes back quicker with his rage debuffs as well, so you get a lot of Haymakers. I'm just throwing my SP1 because obviously none of my debuffs stick, so you can't really rely on it on them, but if I throw my SP1, I get my Haymaker back even quicker. The one thing to watch out for with Kingpin is if he has a lot of rages, he has more combat power, so I tend not to leave him on more than a bar and a half, because I don't want him to accidentally get to SP2, because it will likely be unblockable, and you don't really want to be dealing with that. But overall, it's a really safe fight. He usually has 1 or 2 overpowers, so he does have a lot of attack, but in general, you're just very, very safe since you never need to take the damage. And we finish off that fight with a Haymaker while he's being passive. And that's a 1:16 fight with class disadvantage. So next up for this Surfer, I'm going to be taking it with Hood. The main thing to worry about here is the block penetration, which they get off the Strike Counter Node. But I'm going to be starting with a Power Start 1 to try and avoid that. I am expecting to hit it at some point because during the fight, I expect that I'll just use too many attacks at some point. So I'm going to start off by going straight into my invisibility and trying to power steal my way up to an SP2. He comes in, that's nice. Get a power seal off, which is great. And then I'm just going to drop my SP2 here during invisibility, try and get some power seal. Trigger conduit, which is a little bit annoying. Now I'm just going to bait out this SP2. But he just doesn't want to throw it. And I noticed that my bullets are almost running out of duration, so I just figure I'll cash in on some damage now. The heavy attack makes them do more damage. Still trying to bait out this special, and I tried to hit this block, unfortunately power steal and push myself to SP3, which is not what you really want, so just going to throw it so I can get back to another SP2 as soon as I can. The SP3 is not bad, but it doesn't give you that added utility of buff control. So back to trying to bait out his specials. Being a little bit stingy, don't really want to push him to an SP2, but thankfully he throws it there. Trigger my invisibility during his SP1 animation. Getting some nice misses, which is filling up my bullets again, because I'm running a little bit low. But I think I've almost got the range here, so I throw my SP2. And I'm going to go for the detonation here. It almost takes care of him, down to 5%. He triggers the regen, but I'm just going to combo him and finish off this fight. So not too bad, a little bit annoying to get pushed to SP3, could have been a lot quicker, but overall Hood's very good for that fight. Next up is this Mangog on the Power Reserve and Falter Node. So the main thing I'm going to be watching out for is try and time my special attacks or heavy attacks when that Falter timer comes on. And I also don't want him to throw an SP2 while he's enraged, though on this node, since there's not the unblockable node and his SP2 goes unblockable via a buff, I can actually use a heavy to stagger that buff and be able to block it. I will also have my Haymaker on hand if possible, and I'm fine pushing him to an SP3 as long as he's not enraged, because that will stun you. Though, again, with a Haymaker, you're pretty safe. So there's not too much to worry about in this fight, but just a few things to keep an eye on. I'm going to trigger Haymaker early because I want to be able to dash and everything, and I also want it back in time for his SP2. So I've got my eye on his buff there, and I just throw my SP1 here because I know the last hit will just about fit in during the timer. And I'm just going to use that Falter to try and bait out a special. If not, that's fine. End with a Haymaker here to see if he wants to throw an SP2. He doesn't, but that's fine. I know that I can just block the SP2 if needed. And there we go. I see the Falter timer coming, and I want to use my SP2 just before. I've got my eye on it, and we fit it in. Here, he throws his SP2 during the Falter, which is fantastic. I'm going to dex in so that I'm in range to just do some light attacks because I want to hold on to my Haymaker here. Don't want to use your Haymaker too early. I know that I'm in range again from that heavy. End with a Haymaker, triggering attack, and just take some of that SP2 during the Haymaker. This fight's going really smoothly. Again, got my eye on the timer of his buff. I managed to time my SP1. This time he doesn't throw his SP2. But that's fine. I can see that I've just about got the range to finish off this fight, so without him throwing another SP2, so I just go for my Haymaker. If he wants to throw his SP2, that's fine. He doesn't, and I managed to combo him to finish out the fight. And lastly, today there is another Knull boss, and I do not blame you if you want to skip this. I would as well. I'm just going to speed this one up because I've gone over it a few times now. You can feel free to go and check out those videos if you really want to see how it's done. But thankfully next season, the glancing means that Miles won't be a viable option anymore, so thank God I will never have to do this fight ever again. But yeah, on with the sped up fight. So now that that's done, War 11 is over, and I've just got one more video to do, just War 12 next. I'll try and get that out in the next few days, hopefully. This war was alright. I'm still a little bit annoyed about that IDoom fight. I know a lot of things I could have done differently to avoid that death, not just by fighting better and not making those couple mistakes I did, but also just team composition. I realised that I didn't need Hood in this war. I could have done the same fights with Tigra, but also taken that IDoom with Tigra, which would have been a much safer fight as well. Overall, just, you know, a lot I would have done differently. But learning from mistakes, and in the future I will definitely take that fight better if I have to. But on to War 12 next, so I'll see you for that one. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you later. Cheers.